You absolutely been crushing it. You've been crushing it for like 3 years now.
The day I lost my job, the next day I found out I was pregnant for my son.
Babies.
Babies.
Two babies.
Two babies.
Big difference.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, who's more important, that guy or yourself and your family?
I was green. I just got my license. I was excited. I was planning on blowing the place up and building a giant agency.
Everybody told me that I wasn't gonna make it.
Hey, don't you have some flashcards? Can I stop by and pick them up? Because I didn't know where you lived, or so I would have just showed up.
I'm really glad I made that decision.
So, I mean, you write hundreds and hundreds of policies, right? Which is pretty amazing.
You know, this person's been successful. You know, why am I gonna try to reinvent the wheel? I really need to do what they've done to get what they've got.
Oh, the phone and this and that, and they just have all these excuses.
Right.
You proved instantly.
Yeah.
That it could be done.
I went to sleep one night and I woke up and I was like, I need to do this.
Welcome to my show of ordinary people doing extraordinary things, where we hear from regular people who got tired of living their ordinary lives and were not afraid to make that jump.
You gotta be different. You can't be doing what everyone else is doing. You gotta create action. You gotta create momentum. So I'm looking for demand and I'm looking for mentorship because I wanted to know everything my mentor knew.
People who are just like you and me. Hello, my name is David Price. Thank you for tuning in. If there's something that you like, please hit the thumbs up button. If there's some content that you want to see, make sure you hit the subscribe button and hit the little bell so you get notifications. This is going to be another episode of Ordinary People Doing Extraordinary Things. Here I have a special guest, Miss Lady on Fire, Bianca. Hello, Bianca.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Bianca issued over $1 million of final expense, all on the phone, 100% on the phone. We're gonna talk a little bit about that, how she did that, how she got there, and where she started. So Bianca, man, super excited to have you. I mean, you absolutely been crushing it. You've been crushing it for like 3 years now. Just continue to increase the definition of crush it. But let's talk about what did you do before insurance? Let's get to know Bianca before you were the lady on fire.
Absolutely. What a journey. So I started off in the treatment center field, working with adolescents, you know, drug addicts and alcoholics. And so I did that for about 4 or 5 years. And I was actually in school to get my degree in social work. And I thought that was going to be my path. And I actually got extremely burnt out, you know, because when you're giving to so many people, it can be emotionally draining, you know. And what happened was I ended up losing my job back in 2018, and it really made me rethink what my path looked like, you know. And so I really just started praying, you know, what else is out there? The day I lost my job, the next day I found out I was pregnant for my son, you know. And so here I am, a single mom, you know, pregnant with my second child, just lost a job. You know, everybody told me that I wasn't gonna make it, you know, like you don't have time to take care of your kids, like you're living paycheck to paycheck, like how are you gonna do it? And so I really started praying for an opportunity, you know, to where I could make a substantial income and be able to create my own schedule, you know, so that I could take care of my kids. And, you know, literally like a week later, I was approached by 3 different people about selling life insurance. And so that put the thought in my head, and I was like, this is interesting, you know, not something I ever thought that I would do before, but, you know, I took it as a sign.
Awesome. So you had 3 people approach you for life insurance, 3 different companies.
Yeah.
I'm assuming they're all 3 friends.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And you were planning on speaking to all 3 of them.
Yeah. I did speak to all 3.
You did speak to all 3?
I did.
Okay.
I did.
And then what happened?
So, you know, one of them was actually somebody I didn't even know, but, you know, he worked for a company that I knew a lot about. And one of them was a good friend of mine who was doing like mortgage protection at the time. And obviously one of them was you, you know. And, you know, when I was first approached about the opportunity, I was like, you know, I don't know if I want to talk about death all day, you know. But I didn't really see it as like the product that I was selling, but more so about the opportunity that it could offer me as a single mom, you know, having just lost my job, you know, really just needing, you know, a lifeline, and so that's really how it happened.
Awesome. So you made the decision, I'm gonna get my insurance license, right? But it wasn't a fast thing for you.
No.
Right? It took you, how long was it before you actually started your license, got your license? I know there's some procrastination in there, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So right after I was approached about the opportunities, I decided to go with a friend of mine that was doing the mortgage protection. And so I signed up for the course, and, I had a lot of self-doubt. Here I was, I had this path and this vision of what my life was going to look like, and then it suddenly shifted, and I had a lot of self-doubt, about, can I really do this? Is this the right choice? Is this for me? And I was pregnant at the time, so I wasn't in a huge hurry to get to work. But it was a lot of fear. I signed up for the course and, did a little bit here and did a little bit there, but, it was really just a time where I was really trying to find myself, And so, I think it took me about 9 months. I didn't have anybody really guiding me. The guy that I was going to work for, he was just kind of, left me on my own to really figure it out. And so, without having that guidance and that support, I just kept getting off course, And then finally, I was actually talking to somebody about this the other day. Like, I went to sleep one night and I woke up and I was like, I need to do this. It's time to, take my life back. And, again, being a single mom and having 2 kids, like, everything's riding on me.
Babies.
2 babies.
Big difference.
Yeah. Yeah. My daughter, I think, was like 3 at the time, and my son was just born.
Right.
And through the process of me getting my license, my daughter's dad had passed away. Yeah. And so that was another, pressure on me. I didn't have, that support. And then, my son's father, wasn't really in the picture at the time. And so it was just, everything was just riding on me. And so that was really my why to really motivate me to, I need to get this done. It's time to stop wasting time, and I need to get serious, and so that's what happened.
I remember, so when you and I talked at first, I was green. I just got my license. I was excited. I was planning on blowing the place up and building a giant agency.
Yeah.
I had no idea how to or what obstacles I had in my way, right?
Right.
But you were probably one of the first people I spoke to. So now these 9 months pass. I learn a lot.
Right.
I start catching some momentum.
Yeah.
And I remember I'm in Lafayette, Louisiana, and I'm like, man, I need to talk to Bianca.
Yeah.
She's supposed to work with somebody else. I don't see her working.
Right.
So we got to see what's going on there. I remember trying to figure out how to get in front of you, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, you remember, hey, don't you have some flashcards? Can I stop by and pick them up? Because I didn't know where you lived, or so I would have just showed up. And so I'm in your apartment, right? And we're sitting there, and I'm asking you why you haven't started yet. You remember that day?
I do.
Yes, you sure?
Yeah, we talked about it last night.
So, but yeah, so then, you're supposed to work with another company, right? And what happened that day that made you decide that you're going to work with us, with me, instead of the previous decision you made?
Well, let me backtrack a little bit. I remember when I was working at the treatment center, I remember me and you had met somewhere, and you were super excited about senior life, and you were showing me the Leads the Way app, and you were like, oh my God, this is so great. And I was like, yeah, it's like, I didn't need the opportunity at the time. I still had a job.
You're like, I'm going to do the pregnant thing.
Yeah, I'm going to keep working over here, living paycheck to paycheck, but again, it was comfortable, so the idea of, doing something else just was not on the radar. And, you actually did support me through that process, even though I was like, no, I'm going to go work with this company, and, I'm going to, give this a try. Like, you still, continue to reach out to me. How are you doing? What's going on? You and Jen, as a matter of fact, and I actually remember, you and whoever your manager was at the time, we did like a 3-way call, and I was like, no, I really want to go work with this guy because I'm loyal to him. And, I remember your mentor at the time, asked me like, who's more important, that guy or yourself and your family? And I really had to, really make a pros and cons list, of, okay, if I do this, or if I, work with David. And when I really put it on paper, I'm like, who do I want leading me? And you were obviously the the obvious choice.
Leader, right?
I'm really glad I made that decision.
So that's good.
You know?
That's good.
So, but I mean, when you showed up at my house that day, it was just, again, more, confirmation, and I remember you handed me the iPad, and I was getting contracted with that other company, and it was going to take me like 4 weeks, and so I wasn't going to wasn't making money for 4 weeks, and you handed me the iPad and you were like, here, write yourself a policy. And so I wrote myself a policy, and you're like, all right, you're trained, you can get working tomorrow, and so that was also appealing to me, because with the other company I was going to work for, mortgage protection, I was going to have to learn a bunch of different carriers. There was going to be a huge learning curve, so to have something simple, was appealing to me, so.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad you choose us.
Yes.
Right. So definitely. All right, cool. So you got your license, you made your decision, you get contracted with us. This is pre-COVID. We're all out in the field, right? You're a field agent, just getting started. I remember your first few sales were with some friends and family, right? Walk us through what it was like, again, because I don't believe you had any real sales experience before.
No.
So and you'd never been self-employed.
Right.
So what was the process? How did that feel? What was going through your head when it was all on you now?
Yeah. I mean, again, I had a huge motivator, pushing me to really get this thing going, and so I remember you sent me the things to get started. I went through everything. I was still super nervous, but, I would think that I'm very coachable. And so you said, hey, set up some practice presentations with your friends and family, get comfortable. And so that's what I did. I feel like I take direction very well.
You do? I wish I could figure out how to get other people to.
I mean, that's how I've always lived my life. It's like, this person's been successful. Why am I going to try to reinvent the wheel? I really need to do what they've done to get what they've got, and so, I set up some practice presentations with my friends and my family, and amazingly, they like turned into sales. It was like, hey, I just need a check for $44.95, and they handed me a check, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. And I made a few $1,000s doing that, but it allowed me to be comfortable, and showed me that, I can do this, and really, there was a moment where things clicked where, in the field that I was in previously, like I was dealing with people, and I was helping people. And that's what I love to do. And so when I really connected with that I'm not selling something, I'm really helping people, and I'm just trying to figure out how to solve people's problems. Everything kind of changed from there, and even when my daughter's dad passed away, I believe he didn't have any life insurance. And so, that was another thing that kind of clicked, where it was like, if I can help prevent somebody else from having to go through that, that's pretty amazing.
Absolutely. I mean, you do an amazing job. I don't have the numbers, but I mean, you write hundreds and hundreds of policies, right? Which is pretty amazing. All right. So you did some friends and family. Now it's like, okay, let's get some leads. Let's go out in the field. Let's knock on some doors, right? And I know we're all scared. I remember my first door, I was hoping they didn't answer.
Yeah.
I feel like everyone goes through that. So what was that like? Because that's a whole nother step that you got to make.
Yeah. Well, and when I first got started with you guys, I was still in school.
Right.
That I was still doing that. And so, when I would get off of school, I would, get some leads and go knock on some doors. And, like I said, I made a few $1,000s with my friends and my family. But then when I started working leads, it was different, and I was going out there, I was doing presentations, but I wasn't closing any sales. But I wasn't going to give up. I continued to call you, we continued to talk and, just tweak, what I was doing. And even though nothing was happening in my mind, I was still learning. Right. I was growing. I just couldn't see it because I wasn't making any sales, but things were happening. And I think, I've never done sales before, never done anything like this. Like, how can I expect to be successful?
You're realistic.
Overnight,
Look at that.
Yeah. But there were times where like I would come home and my mom would be like, did you make a sale today? And I'd be like, no, I didn't, and, people were starting to doubt, but you kept telling me like, you can do this. I'm telling you, and just seeing Jen and how successful she was, I'm like, if she can do it, like, I know I can do it, and so I just kept telling myself that. And then I think it was like a 3-week period where I didn't sell any policies, and then went to a house one day and the guy handed me a check, and I was like, oh my God, yes, I did it.
Taste.
I got the taste, yeah. And then it was really like all downhill from there.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely, right? So now you made your first sale. Now your first full month,
Yeah.
you said, screw it, I'm just gonna be number one agent in the country.
Yeah. No,
Right?
yeah. Well, it was actually, so I made that first sale.
Uh-huh.
And then, so that was, I think maybe in May. And so I was like, I'm going to take a semester off and really, give this everything I have, because I would equate some of my non-success to not really being fully committed.
Right.
I was really just part-time at that point. And so,
Thinking you needed a second job.
yeah, I think I need a
Remember?
second job.
Like,
yeah.
no, Bianca, you don't need a second job.
Yeah, right. like you said, I think you did an interview and you're like, why would I go, drive a Uber Eats for $60 an hour when I can sell a life insurance policy for $1,000 an hour?
Right.
So, I was like, I'm going to take the semester off, and I'm really going to give this everything I have. And, I sat my mom down and I was like, hey, I really need your support. Like, for the next year, I'm going all in. I'm going to be successful at this. And she was like, okay, I'll give you a year. And so in May, I worked 7 days a week, like really was on the grind. And I think I produced about $18,000 in business and made about $5,000 my first full month. And then my second full month with Senior Life, I produced over $41,000 in business and made and like deposited about $15,000 in my bank account. And I was like, whoa. But it just goes to show, like, when you put your mind to it and you really give this 100%, like, you will see the results. When I finally stopped doubting myself and stopped making excuses and getting in my own way, that's when I really took off.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, big shout out to your mom.
Yeah.
I mean, your mom has been like your backbone. I mean, she's always there for you. And, support is so important, especially when you have two babies running around.
Yeah.
So I'm sure your mom's going to see this, and big shout out to your mom for really, because without her, right, you know what I mean? Like, it would have been way harder if you didn't have somebody to help with that.
When it's crazy, like, how everything aligns, because, like, I think,
You're going to cry.
I am going to cry, but, me and my mom both lost our jobs, like, around the same time. And she, kept trying to look for a job, and it just, like, wasn't working out. And, I think back now, like, if she would have started working or what have you, she wouldn't have been there to support me. And so I really feel like everything happened for a reason. And now, making the kind of money that I make, like, my mom works for me full time, and I'm able to fully support her, and she doesn't go have to find a full-time job at 63 years old, And so support is extremely important.
It's awesome.
You
It's
know?
awesome. It's great seeing it. So
Yeah.
you basically mastered the field after like 2 months, right?
Yeah.
And then, and life's full of hiccups, right?
Right.
So then COVID happens.
Yeah.
And I remember I'm watching the news. I wouldn't argue with anyone about getting locked down. Like, dude, they're not going to lock us down. They can't even lock us down. Like, it's not a real thing. So I would have been wrong on that. And but what I knew was people were going to be scared.
Yeah.
People weren't going to want us to come into their houses. And my decision is, hey, we had a bunch of field agents that never used the phone, and we're going to switch everything over, and we're all going to learn the phone. So now you're somebody that's never used the phone to sell insurance, not even to set an appointment,
Yeah.
right?
Or sale in general.
Right.
Yeah.
So now, boom, that's it. I tell you, you're not allowed in the field anymore.
Yeah.
You got to learn the phone, take all your leads, make a giant pile. Let's walk through that, because there's a lot of people that think you can't sell on the phone. I talk to people all the time, like, oh, the phone and this and that, and they just have all these excuses.
Right.
You proved instantly
Yeah.
that it could be done. So walk us through that.
So, I mean, at that point in time, I had just really hit my year mark, and so I really had found my stride. And then here we go, changing things up, and it was a very scary time. Like, I remember being scared, like, oh my gosh, I'm just starting to be successful. Like, I just made 6 figures my first year. Oh my God, what am I going to do, But I would like to think that I'm resilient, and I can pivot. I've been thrown a lot of things in my life, and I've overcame a lot of adversity.
All of it.
All of it, yeah. So I love a challenge, really, and honestly, like, at that point in time, like, I was really starting to get I wouldn't say bored, but just I'm always like looking for the next challenge, the next thing, to challenge myself. And so
I'll keep that in mind.
yeah, it really came at a perfect time, And so I remember just, my kids were off of school. Like, I mean,
Right.
I was like stuck in the house, and I took all my old leads that I couldn't get in touch with, and I locked myself in my room for a couple hours each day and just started dialing, and I think for me, it was like I really didn't change anything. I took the personality that I have, in the field and with people, and I just translated that to the phone. And I think a lot of people struggle with, I have to change things up and, to sell on the phone. And it really isn't any different. It's the same thing, it's talking to people, and I remember just envisioning like that the person was like in front of me, and I believe my first week I sold like $10,000 in business.
You actually did 10,000 2 weeks in a row.
2 weeks in a row.
Your first
Okay.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
I remember that. I was like, there we go. It opened up my eyes. 'Cause
Yeah.
I didn't think it was possible. And you know how you say like the phone and the field are the same.
Yeah.
Again, I'll have people argue with me, be like, no, it's different. Like you need a different script. You need to do different. I'm like, I got proof of concept.
Yeah, it's true. And I remember like Jen calling me like freaking out, and I was
Oh
like,
my goodness.
I was like, Jen, you can do this. You can do this. Like if I can do it, you can do it. Just like don't change anything. Bring your personality, over the phone. And then I think the next week she wrote like $10,000 in business on the
She
phone.
freaked out the whole month, and she issued $48,000 in business, which was more than she's ever done in a month, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Freaking out the whole time.
When I think what really changed too is, I was, for the first couple weeks, I was working from my house. And I remember, a lot of the people in the Lafayette area, like we really came together and we, got a space and started supporting each other and, started doing, again, calling and whatnot. And, it was like, wow, we can do this. Like, this is amazing.
I don't think I don't know another agency that pivoted as fast as we did, and I think it had to do with our culture.
Yeah.
We just have such a strong culture, and it's just like, okay, what's next?
Yeah.
Let's make it happen. And again, you ladies, right, and some guys, just did an amazing job with it. So
Well, thanks to you too. I mean, you're a great leader. It's like there's no other option. This is what you're gonna do.
that's it.
And it's like, okay, this is what we're doing.
No, it's good, man. It's been a lot of fun. So again, let's go some numbers. I think your first year, right? It actually wasn't a full year, right? So your first full year, you issued over $400,000 in business, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As a personal producer.
Yeah.
Last year, you issued over $1 million, right? As an agency, right? So now you mastered the field.
And was number one agent in the country.
Number one agent in the country. You mastered the phone.
Mm-hmm.
And now you have agents. You have tons of successful agents that are working from the comfort of their house,
Right.
on your virtual call center that you manage, right?
Yeah.
Writing business. Again, people just like yourself that had no sales experience, that just got their license, that didn't know anything about insurance. How does that feel? Tell us about it. I mean, that's pretty damn exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, during that time, I think it was maybe, 4 or 5 months in, I was like, oh wow, I can really do this. Like I can sell way more business over the phone than I ever could in the field. And then, when I broke the record for most sales in 1 week, that was another, challenge that I created for myself, and just proving to myself that I can do this. Like this can be done, any which kind of way, no matter what the lead is, what have you. You could be in a room by yourself and still do it, just following our system, And so once I did that, that just gave me more confidence. And then, we decided to open up a call center, I think a couple months later in Lafayette. And that was interesting. That was fun. That was another experience, but then too, it's like, you're still thinking small, a call center in Lafayette, like you can only help so many people. So after that experience, I'm like, why don't we do a virtual call center? That way we can help agents all over the place and they can still get the mentorship and the guidance that they need. And so, that's been a huge game changer, and, making $20,000 a month from my kitchen table is exciting. It's possible, and I owe it all to, really the virtual call center, just having that support, having other people that are like-minded, that are excited about, selling insurance, excited about building a business, excited about helping people, it really changes everything, when you really have that support, and, honestly, when my agency did $1 million, like I was surprised. Like I really wasn't like looking at the numbers or trying to do that, but it happened because I give it 100% every single day. I still work 6 days a week. I still sacrifice a lot of time with my family, but it's because I have this vision and this end goal in mind. Even when I found out I was #1 agent in the Blake Group, I was surprised, but I just owe it all to all the hard work that I put into it,
So what's this vision? Tell me about this goal.
So, to me, Senior Life and my insurance agency, it's just a vehicle, right? To get me to where I really want to be. I've always had this dream. I still really love helping people that struggle with addiction. That's always going to be a passion of mine, because I've been sober now for 9 years.
Congratulations.
And so I really connect with that. And I feel like that's a calling that I have, and so when I was working with adolescents, I see like that's where the problem starts, is our youth, right? And so I really want to have, my own treatment center one day, or, a retreat for kids where they can come and get away and, learn life skills and, learn how to be a productive member of society. And, obviously to do something like that, you need income, and so this is a vehicle for me to be able to just help people on a larger scale, because I feel like that's my purpose. My purpose is to help people, not just with life insurance, but, with other things as well.
That's awesome. I love your goal. So what's the date on it?
I don't know. I don't.
We need a date.
I don't have a date.
We need a date. What year is this treatment? This retreat opening?
I hope to be a millionaire in the next 5 years. That's the goal.
So 2030.
2030.
2030.
Yeah,
that's
let's
it.
just
So if you got a drug issue, or you plan on having a drug issue, 2030, Bianca's gonna be opening up her resort.
Yeah.
To help people.
Yeah.
So awesome.
Yeah.
And I believe you'll do it.
Yeah.
You've done every single thing you set your mind out to. You're like a laser guided bullet or missile. Like you come up with your goal. You brought the week that you broke the record, and you have so many outstanding accomplishments. I can't even keep track of them all. Right. So let's talk about that. You did 20. What was it? 20.
So the first time I did it,
28,000.
was 28,000.
28?
A little over 28,000.
Okay. So let's backtrack. Senior Life Insurance Company, they released a YouTube video saying that Joey Faircloth had the record for like 12 years or something like that, right? And you tell me you want to break the record.
Yeah.
I tell you you're gonna need 200 leads.
Yeah.
And you'll break it. I give you the 200 leads, and boom, you submit $28,000, 100% on the phone in a single week.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, right? So in that video, the key is that he told me or not me, but I felt like he was
Everyone,
speaking to me.
He was talking to you.
He was speaking to me, exactly how he did it. He got this many leads, he worked this many hours, and this is exactly what he did to get those results. And, we tell everybody all the time what our secrets are to our success, but it's the belief. Like people don't believe that if they do this, they'll get that, right? And for me, I did. My mindset has always been, if that person can do it, I can do it. And that's basically what happened. I saw what he did, and I was like, I want to break his record. I can do it. And you were like, yes, you can, and this is how many leads you're going to have to get, and this is what you're going to have to do. And, that week was, again, the encouragement. Like everybody from the home office, even Joey was like texting me and emailing me, like, you can do it. You can do it, and I was
break
like,
my record.
yeah,
Right?
I mean, that's the support that you get with this company, and it's just amazing. And the support of my team, fellow coworkers, just cheering me on. And, I got laser focused. I locked myself in my office and just went to work.
Mom, be watching the kids for a week.
Yeah. I mean, there was a few times where I was like, man, if I don't do this, like, I'm going to feel like a loser. But, I kept telling myself, like, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it, and then, so that was, I think, in July
During
something
COVID,
like that. Yeah,
right?
during
the whole world's
COVID,
saying, "Oh, no one has money. The life's upside down. We're all broke,
Right, yeah.
right? You're just printing money."
Yeah, print money. And then again, I did it like I believe in December.
Right. Then we had a contest. Right.
Yeah.
And you're going head to head with somebody else.
Yeah.
And you're like, all right, well, I guess I'll just break my record again.
Yeah,
Why
right.
the heck not?
And I did 30,000.
30,000.
In December.
December, right? No
Yeah.
one could write business in December. They're all worried about Christmas. You did 30,000 of submitted business, 100% on the phone in December. And that time I know you took advantage of our TV leads.
Yeah.
Right? So,
Yeah.
so took advantage of our TVs. And the last time you did it with direct mail leads.
Yeah, all direct mail.
So you proved it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
You give me phone numbers, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
That's it. I just need phone numbers and names.
Activity.
And that's it. Activity. You're out activity, everyone. So man, so that's a lot of records, amazing things. Where are we going? What's the next record? What's the next milestone for Bianca, the lady on fire?
Yeah. So, I mean, my goal is to do $3 million in business by the end of this year.
Sweet.
I want to help, 5 agents do at least 6 figures,
Okay.
So not just about how I can make money, but how can I help other people
Right.
make money? And that's another, that helps me be more successful too, because it's not all about me, like teaching other people how to do what I do, because this opportunity has changed my life so much. How could I not? It'd be selfish to not share it with people, and help them achieve the success that I've found. So, $3 million in production, want to make at least $700,000 in personal income, want to hire at least 300 agents, and, really just continue to break those ceilings, defy the status quo.
Defy the status quo.
Yeah. I'm a champion.
You are. Absolutely.
Champion.
You are.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we got some business goals. Do you have any personal goals or anything? Because I know you're also real spiritual.
Yeah.
I know you give a lot of your money to the church.
Yeah.
I know you do a lot of other things where you're giving back and stuff like that. But do you have any other goals that aren't business related?
Yeah. I mean, I want to have a brand new home. I've never bought my first home before, so I want to have my own home for me and my kids on a big piece of property so they can play. And I want to build a better relationship with my children and with my family, not just make everything about work, but also be able to, enjoy myself, and really build a better relationship with God, spend more time doing ministry, with people and, giving more money back to the church. I mean, my goal is to do, 10% of everything I make every month, so I have a lot of goals. And just really be a light in people's life, I feel like I never really had that, growing up. Like, I didn't have like that person I could just like look up to and like be inspired by, and be that. I never had like a cheerleader, like, somebody telling me like I can do it. And so I just really want to be that for other people. I want to be that person that people can look up to. Like, man, look at all the things she's gone through in her life, all the adversity, all the time she's been knocked down, and she got back up, and look at her now. I even see myself like being like a motivational speaker.
You are.
You
are. You just gotta get on more stages.
Yeah. Like even being a motivational like leadership coach. I believe in myself, and I believe that I have a purpose, and that I've been chosen and destined for greatness,
Absolutely.
And so the sky's the limit.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to set any blocks on what I can achieve, and I'm not going to put myself in this box, like this is it. It's like always, what's next?
You're amazing. Thank you for coming today.
Yeah.
So you're hiring nationwide, I believe?
Yeah.
Okay. So Bianca, Lady on Fire, she's hiring nationwide. If you're interested in being on her team or get in touch with her, put some stuff in the comments. I'll find you. I'll link you up with Bianca, Lady on Fire. You'll have somebody that can teach you how to sell in the field, on the phone, how to build a team,
Yes.
how to break records,
Yes.
how to give back. I mean, there's not much this girl can't do. So Bianca, again, I really appreciate you coming down, giving us some of your time. I know your time is very valuable. You're a superstar. You got a lot on your plate. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. And again, I'm just an ordinary person doing extraordinary things.
I love it. Absolutely. So again, if there's something that you like, put it in the comments. If there's something you're missing, something you want to see, put it in the comments. We'll make some videos for you. If you like what you saw, hit the thumbs up. If you want to see more content coming, hit the subscribe button, hit that little bell so you get notifications. This has been another episode of Ordinary People Doing Extraordinary Things. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.